In the 8th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, came the word of the Lord unto Zachariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo, the prophet, saying, The Lord hath been sore displeased with your fathers. All right, now, the time of Darius is the time that they were rebuilding Jerusalem. Now, it started with Cyrus, king of Persia, and he actually helped the Jews to go back and build a temple. He even helped finance them. But they had so much opposition with some of the outside nations that the work was practically stalled for a period of about 18 years or so. And the main thing that they had against the Jews was that they were an independent race of people, and they wouldn't pay taxes to other governments, and the kingdoms would take a loss. There would be a total loss to everyone else. In other words, they figured everyone had to pay taxes, and the Jews did not want to. And so this brought about a lot of opposition from the other nations. But Yahweh says that he was sore displeased with your fathers, as Zechariah brings out. Now this means that those who had preceded the restoration of Jerusalem, they went down because of disobedience. Now the time had come to restore Jerusalem, and Yahweh had promised a restoration of Jerusalem. Now, in restoring Jerusalem, after the 70 years, this was only typical because it was not a restoration that was lastingly established. It was restored to fulfill prophecy. The 70 years burned out actually means that Jerusalem would be restored after Yahweh's due period of time of being held down. So this restoration had no real effect. It was restored on earth, and actually the Jerusalem which is to bless mankind is not on earth, it's in the heavens. So this was also typical, indicating that Yahweh would restore Jerusalem, and actually when it is restored, finally, it has to be at the end of the 6,000 years. Therefore say thou unto them, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, Turn ye unto me, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will turn unto you, saith the Lord of hosts. Okay, now this is the process that the sincere, devoted individual who wants to receive Yahweh's blessing, he turns to Yahweh. He searches for his God. He wants to know the will of his Creator, and what is right and what is wrong, and what will be pleasing to him and what is displeasing. He wants to correct himself. So we go to him, and he blesses us. Now, we don't just lay idly by and say, well, if he wants to save me, he'll do something about it. No such thing. You don't know. He knows. There's nothing that he has to learn. You need the knowledge. And if you want anything, you're going to have to strive to get it. That's all. You must put forth an effort. If you're hungry, you eat, right? If you're tired, you sleep. If you need exercise, you move around. If you want to learn, you study. You search. You must do something. You're not a dead creature that has to be fed like some water plant where everything comes to it. You are a free moral agent, and the blessings are here, but you must make an effort to receive them. All right. Now he says in verse 4, we're in Zechariah 1. Verse 4, Be ye not as your fathers, unto whom the former prophets have cried, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, Turn ye now from your evil ways and from your evil doings, but they did not hear nor hearken unto me, saith the Lord. All right, now again he has to repeat, don't be like your fathers. You saw what happened to them. Centuries of disobedience, centuries of misery and destruction. Don't be like them. Now I'm restoring you. Don't follow the same course as your fathers. They had so much evidence of what disobedience had brought about. Disgrace, complete disgrace, oppression, annihilation. Those who were left were in slavery. And this, after they were one of the most blessed people on the face of the earth. What a step downwards. It's not a case that they were slaves all the time. They were delivered. They were the most honorable of the earth. What nation did Yahweh ever give his laws to or deal with? And here they come down and become servants of slaves, of heathen. This was their own doings, because Yahweh was displeased. Now he says, your fathers, where are they? And the prophets, do they live forever? But my words and my statutes, which I commanded my servants, the prophets, did they not take hold of your fathers? And they returned and said, like as the Lord of hosts sought to do unto us according to our ways and according to our doings, so hath he dealt with us. Well, in plain language, the thing has happened exactly as was prophesied. In other words, they were prophesied destruction, and it's happened to them. Even though the prophets were no longer there, the ones who had uttered these words, the words were from Yahweh, and they were living words, and they accomplished exactly what Yahweh had promised would happen to them. Now, upon the 24th day of the 11th month, which is the month Sebat, in the second year of Darius, now this would be approximately February the 24th, somewhere in there. In the second year of Darius came the word of the Lord unto Zachariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo, the prophet, saying, I saw by night, and behold, a man riding upon a red horse, and he stood among the myrtle trees that were in the bottom, and behind him were their red horses speckled in white. Now we have a lot of confusion here in the translations. Every translation you pick has something else. Now the New English says it was a bay horse, black, dappled, and white. Moffat says chestnut, and behind him was a chestnut, black, sorrel, and white. Then there's another, says man on a red horse, red, speckled, and white. Then one is the New Jerusalem is a man, not on a horse. And the horses were red, sorrel, black, and white. And the Septuagint, man on red, gray, piebald, and white. Piebald is speckled. Now, the closest to the prophecy in Revelation concerning the four horsemen of the apocalypse is the New Jerusalem, and the only one color that does not agree altogether, there's a red, there's a black, and there's a white. The only one that does not agree is the sorrel, and the Septuagint has it gray. Now, these horses have a meaning. The colors have a meaning. Now, if we go to Revelation 6, we find, and I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard as it were the noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, come and see, or one of the four living creatures. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Now, Yahweh says that the white is the righteousness of the saints. The one on the white horse is Yahshua, because in righteousness he makes war. So the white symbolizes a righteous conquering, a righteous war. In other words, It's not a warfare merely to conquer, to possess selfishly. It is a conquering of wickedness, of evil, that those who love righteousness may be delivered and be able to perform what is just and right. This is what Yahweh is going to do to his people. He's going to free them. If I make you free, you shall be free indeed, he says. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, "Come and see." And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. Now, these things began with the nation rising against nation. This is the time of the First World War, and this is the time that the devil's organization was first interfered with, and the truth began to be spread upon the earth, and the lies, the falsehoods that the devil's organization was established on began to show some real results. In other words, they began to get some real problems like they never had before. The first time in history there was a world war, what they termed a world war. There was never any war that was termed a world war, or called one. But at this time, they did call it a world war because there had been nothing like it before. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, "Come and see." And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, "A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine." Well, the balances would indicate that there would be shortages, that everything would have to be measured, that it actually pictures famine. And not hurting the oil and the wine. The oil symbolizes the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, which is poured upon his people. David says, "Thou anointest my head with oil." And the oil symbolizes the Spirit of the Almighty God, and the wine symbolizes the revealed truths, that which makes you happy. In other words, even though there was a shortage of food, the truth was still going to continue. The command was given that the truth would not die out. The blessings from Yahweh would continue, and the truth would continue. The truth was preserved through it all. And when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse. Now this is the closest that we get to the gray. A pale horse is a horse that's not white. It has no color of any kind. It is like a lack of color. There's nothing outstanding or no brilliance about him. The gray is a mixture of black and white. White is all colors mixed together. Black is no color. Actually, the mixture of the two, it just kills all the colors, and you get a gray effect. This is one reason why gray goes with anything in your dress and clothing, because there's really no color. There's no blue, there's no orange, there's no red, there's no green. It's just like a dead color. So this pale horse is the closest thing to the gray, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him, and power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword and with hunger and with death and with the beasts of the earth. All right, now the amount, or the, might say, the sphere of the space that the First World War occupied, where the battles were really fought, occupied about 1/4 of the Earth's surface. This was in primarily in the Christian countries. It was really a so-called war of those who claimed to be the closest to the living God. And the atrocities that were performed at this time were, well, outdid the heathen. So these 4 horses symbolize warfare, a righteous war, actually a warfare, starvation, and death. Now, with the coming of these events, being that there had been nothing like this on the face of the earth up until that time, many people figured the end of the world had arrived. Religion, for the first time, did bring out that from the fulfillment of the signs, it appears like the kingdom of God has arrived. The religionists actually stated this. And they saw from the evidence that something was happening, that there were really signs in the heavens that this was not just man's doing, that great events were really taking place such as the world had never seen, and the warfare was really getting out of hand. And when they did stop fighting, there was nothing settled. All they did was rest for a brief period of time to recover, and they continued again in 1939. Some 21 years later, they began all over again. And the atrocities of the Second World War were truly such as the world had never seen. If you watch the world at war, there's some horrible, horrible pictures there. At any rate, I'm going to read this from the New Jerusalem because it seems to have the more correct translation. In verse 8, I saw a vision during the night. It was this: a man was standing. Now, other translations have added riding on a horse, but it's inconsistent because it said, I'll read the King James to show you, behold, a man riding upon a red horse, and he stood among the myrtle trees. Okay? There's something wrong there. And in fact, they do bring out that this part was added, where he was on a horse, then he was standing. See? So the way it should read, a man was standing among the deep-rooted myrtles. Behind him were horses, red and sorrel. Now here's where I'm going to include the gray from the Septuagint, and black and white. Now, the deep-rooted myrtle trees, the myrtle trees are deep, leafy, flourishing, protective and movable trees. Now, these animals being behind them means that they had already made their move. In other words, these events, although they may have not been completed, most of the evidence had already been accomplished. In other words, it could have continued from, let's say, from 1914 to 1917. By that time, there was enough evidence of just what was happening. In fact, it was in 1917 that the United States got into the fray. All right? So this means that these events had already happened. Now, in 1917, although it brings you to 1917 when Jerusalem is restored, yet we find that in 1917, the United States entered the war. Then we had an influenza that killed between 20 and 30 million. They're not even sure. 20 and 30 or 30 million people. And this was worldwide. So there was the typhus in Russia, started in 1917 and lasted 1921. There was between 2.5 and 3 million that were killed there through the typhus. Now, this means that up until 1917, you could have had all of these prophecies, all of this evidence already there. You had the warfare, you had the shortages of food, you had the pestilence already beginning, and you had practically the whole world enmeshed in war. Now he brings out, I said, "What are these, my Lord?" And the angel who was talking to me said, "I will explain to you what they are." The man standing among the myrtles answered, "They are those whom Yahweh has sent to patrol throughout the world." All right. They then spoke to the angel of Yahweh standing among the myrtles. They said, "We have been patrolling the world, and see, the whole world is at peace and rest." Now, to patrol the world is to examine it, to see what it is doing, and it would not be proper for Yahweh just to spy on them without giving them some evidence that something is happening. So we find that these 4 horsemen went through first, brought a lot of evidence that something was radically wrong with humankind, that they'd better find their God and see what's really happening and what's going to happen to them. And after this evidence was given, then those who patrol the earth could really say how they reacted. Because before he gave them any evidence, there would have been no reason for them to change their views. Now, he says, the whole world is at peace and rest. Now, this sounds good, but this is not the peace that Yahweh is looking for. This means that even though all these things happened, all this evidence, it didn't move them. It didn't change them. They continued in the same way that they were going before the war. The same religionists who said that it appears like the time for the kingdom has arrived turned right around and rejected everything they said and gave support to the League of Nations, another worldly organization. Not truly trying to find what Yahweh's pleasure was, what was right. They went and supported these same heathen nations who had been slaughtering one another. And this was certainly nothing new that would change their course of conduct. Now, I'm just going to read 15 to show you that Yahweh is not pleased with them. It says, "And I am very sore displeased with the heathen, that they are at ease." So in other words, this should have changed them. It did change the Bible students. It made them realize, they searched very thoroughly, although they expected the end to come in 1914. They found out later that the end of the devil's uninterrupted rule had come in 1914. This they found out. They found this out only by searching. They didn't go ahead and join the League of Nations. And they found out, too, that Yahshua had come to his temple. They says 1918, we say 1917. There was a little disagreement there, but about that time they realized that Yahshua had come to his temple. These were searching, but the religionists were not. Now, verse 12. Then the angel of the Lord answered and said, O Lord of hosts, how long wilt thou not have mercy on Jerusalem and on the cities of Judah, against which thou hast had indignation these 10 years? In other words, these 70 years. How long is it going to be before Jerusalem is restored? Now we know at this time that Jerusalem really began to be restored in the typical sense at that time. It had already begun to be restored. So the cry was, the real Jerusalem. This is the cry that he was, the prayer that he was asking. How long would it be? And the 70 years just simply picture Yahweh's period of time, complete period of time, that it will lay dormant. Now, Luke 21:24 has this to say concerning the Jews, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled, or be fulfilled. All right, now we know from our chronology that the time of the Gentiles ends when Jerusalem is restored. The time of the Gentiles would have to end at the end of the 6th day, when the 7th day began. The 7th day is the 1,000-year reign. It is the kingdom. And the 6,000 years would have to be completed before the Jerusalem was restored. So we find, according to the chronology, that the 6,000 years ended in 1917, and this was the actual end of the Gentile times and the beginning of the kingdom, the setting up of the New Jerusalem. So it would be trodden down by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles fulfilled. And it was fulfilled in 1917. And then Jerusalem is restored. Now, the 70 years pictured Yahweh's complete period of time, that it would not be restored until his period of time is over. And you notice that after the 70 years, even though Jerusalem was restored for a short period of time, we find that it went down again and stayed down. And the Lord answered the angel that talked with me with good words and comfortable words. So the angel that communed with me said unto me, Cry thou, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I am jealous for Jerusalem and for Zion with a great jealousy, or with a loving jealousy. In other words, Yahweh desired Jerusalem, you might say, with all of his heart. He desired Jerusalem and Zion to be restored, to be operating. And this would indicate that there would be no possible chance of Yahweh ever forgetting Zion and Jerusalem. So these were comforting words that Yahweh had not forgotten. His purpose was to restore Jerusalem and Zion. And when Yahweh says this, it encourages us because we know that he cannot lie and his organization will be restored. In fact, it is now restored. And he continues and he says, Now I am very sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease, for I was but a little displeased, and they helped forward the affliction. All right, now Yahweh was displeased with Jerusalem, and the heathen nations conquered them completely. And when they conquered Jerusalem, they took full credit for doing this, It's not that Yahweh removed his protecting hand, they says, it's because of our might. It was the same thing with the remnant of 144,000 who made up the New Jerusalem when they were on earth, who made up the balance of the New Jerusalem. Yahweh was also a little displeased with them. The thing that he was displeased with was not only that there were members in there that didn't belong there, but that the members whose heart was right were going along with those whose heart was not. And they did not fully understand that Yahweh's nation must not compromise with the devil's organization. So Yahweh permitted these heathen nations to overpower them. Now, it wasn't a case of just giving them some trouble. They actually stopped their work and burned their literature and imprisoned the leaders. They just went all out. They didn't stop. So Yahweh was a little displeased, but they took advantage of it and really came down on the remnant. So what he brings out here, they helped forward the affliction. He brings out here, they helped forward the affliction. He brings out here, they helped